In the quiet before dawn, when the mountains still hold their breath, there is a wind that moves without direction. It passes through pine needles and temple corridors alike, and so it passes through the human mind. Many who live in this age feel only this wind, unceasing, sharp, demanding, whispering of tasks unfinished, fears unnamed, thoughts colliding like restless birds against a closed sky. They try to seize the wind, to command it to stop, and in doing so, their hands grow tired and empty. I have watched this struggle for centuries, as rivers have watched stones argue with their own reflections. The more the stone resists the current, the louder the water becomes. Yet somewhere beneath the noise, a deeper stillness waits, like the ocean floor untouched by storm. What if the peace you seek is not found by silencing thought, but by ceasing to fight it? What if the ancient path reveals not conquest of the mind, but harmony with its flowing nature? When the mind learns to listen like bamboo listens to the wind, a different truth begins to speak. Long before words were carved into stone or ink flowed like rivers across silk, the old masters sat beside water and learned by watching it move. They did not command the river to be straight, nor did they curse it for bending. They observed how it yielded to rocks, how it sang when falling, how it rested when the land allowed rest. From this quiet witnessing arose a knowing that later generations would name, though the name itself was never the truth. Wu Wei, they called it, action without forcing, movement born from alignment rather than struggle. The modern mind, sharp as a blade and restless as wind trapped in a valley, believes peace is something to be achieved by effort. Thoughts are treated like enemies, rising one after another, like waves striking a cliff. Each thought is judged, resisted, or chased away, and the cliff slowly erodes. Yet the Buddha spoke of impermanence not as a threat, but as a mercy. Thoughts like clouds crossing a mountain peak are already leaving the moment they arrive. To fight them is to grasp mist, to tighten the fist around emptiness. There is an old Zen image of a mirror hanging in an empty hall. Dust passes through the air, settles for a moment, then drifts away. The mirror does not shout at the dust, nor does it cling to its passing shape. It reflects, and in reflecting, remains clear. Beginner's mind is this mirror, untouched by preference or fear. When thoughts arise, they are neither welcomed nor banished. They are simply seen, like leaves floating on a river, whose depth remains unseen but vast. A wandering monk once asked his teacher how to still his mind. The teacher led him to a mountain stream swollen by spring rain. "Still it," the teacher said, gesturing toward the rushing water. The monk stood confused, watching foam collide with the stone. At last he bowed, understanding that stillness was not the absence of movement, but the absence of resistance. The stream was at peace precisely because it did not argue with gravity. In Buddhism, suffering is born not from thought itself, but from clinging and aversion. A thought of fear arises like a cold wind. The mind tightens, builds walls, names the wind an enemy. In Taoism, such tightening is like forcing bamboo to grow straight by pulling at its shoots. It snaps, and growth is lost. The Tao flows whether acknowledged or not. When the mind aligns with this flow, thoughts lose their power to wound. They become weather, not destiny. Thus, the philosophical foundation is simple, yet deep as an ancient lake. You are not required to empty the mind, nor to purify it by force. You are invited to rest as the valley rests, allowing winds to pass overhead while the earth remains unmoved. Peace is not found at the end of thought, but in the space that has always been watching. When philosophy leaves the mountain and enters the village, it does not change its nature. It only changes its clothing. The river that carved valleys now fills cups, turns wheels, and reflects the faces of those who bend to drink. In the same way, the teaching of not fighting thoughts moves quietly into workrooms, crowded streets, and sleepless nights. The modern life, dense with clocks and glowing screens, often feels like a storm of wind trapped between high walls. Yet even here, the laws of nature remain unchanged, patient as stone. Consider the mind at work. where thoughts rise like birds startled from tall grass. A mistake appears, and the mind chases it, circling again and again, exhausting itself in the sky. When resistance softens, the bird lands. Attention returns to the hands, the breath, the simple act unfolding. Wu Wei reveals itself not as laziness, but as precise effort without strain, like water finding the lowest path, without consulting a map. Productivity born from ease endures longer than effort fueled by fear. In relationships, thoughts often arrive as judgments, sharp as winter wind, cutting across an open plain. One clings to words spoken long ago, replaying them like echoes in a canyon. The ancient teaching reminds us that sound exists only while vibrating. Once the wind stops, silence returns on its own. To stop fighting the echo is to allow the canyon to rest. Compassion arises naturally when the mind no longer grips every passing sound as truth. Time itself behaves like a river, yet the mind builds dams from thought, dividing past and future, regretting what has flowed by and fearing what has not yet arrived. Impermanence teaches that each moment is already dissolving, like frost under morning sun. When this is seen clearly, urgency softens. One acts fully in the present, as a farmer tends soil without demanding the harvest arrive today. Anxiety loosens when the mind understands it cannot outrun the current, only swim with it. Behind these experiences lies a natural law older than any scripture. What is resisted persists. Wind trapped in a closed room howls. Wind passing through open windows becomes a breeze. When thoughts are allowed to arise and fade, their energy completes its cycle. When they are fought, they circle endlessly, seeking resolution. Zen masters spoke of letting thoughts think themselves, the way clouds rain until empty, leaving clear sky behind. In daily life, this wisdom appears subtly. While washing a bowl, the mind may wander like a leaf caught in swirling water. Rather than scolding it, one feels the temperature of the water, hears the sound of ceramic meeting ceramic. The leaf drifts back to still water on its own. Peace is not imposed, it is remembered. Like a mountain reflected in a lake, clarity appears when the surface is no longer stirred by the hand trying to smooth it. Thus, the ancient teaching lives quietly among modern hours. It asks for no retreat to caves or monasteries, only a gentle trust in the way things move when not pushed. In the age when emperors still sought counsel from hermits and mountains were believed to breathe, there lived an old gardener at the edge of a monastery. His back was bent like a willow after many winters, and his days passed in silence, tending a narrow path where stones met moss. Young monks often hurried past him, minds loud as cicadas, carrying questions heavier than their robes. One day, a restless novice stopped and asked how to rid himself of the endless thoughts that tormented his sitting. The gardener said nothing. He handed the novice a bucket filled from the mountain stream and pointed toward a long path of uneven stones. As the novice walked, his mind fought the water, fearing each step would spill it. The more he tightened his grip, the more the water trembled, sloshing wildly. Halfway down the path, exhausted and wet, he stopped. His hands softened, his breath slowed, and his steps found their own rhythm. The water grew still. When he returned, the bucket was lighter, yet enough remained. The gardener smiled like earth after rain. "The water was never your enemy," he said, "only your fear of losing it." In this, the novice glimpsed a paradox as old as Tao itself. Control creates instability, while trust invites balance. Thoughts behave the same way. When held too tightly, they spill into suffering. When carried lightly, they settle. Zen often speaks in contradictions, because truth, like a mountain path, cannot be walked in a straight line. To stop fighting thoughts does not mean surrendering to them blindly, just as yielding to a river does not mean drowning. Bamboo bends in the storm, yet does not follow the wind into the sky. There is a quiet strength in allowing movement without becoming it. This is the middle way, narrow as a ridge between valleys. Another tale tells of a swordsman who trained his entire life to still his mind before battle. When thoughts arose, he struck them down like enemies. Yet his blade grew heavy, and his strikes slowed. An old master told him to sit beside a waterfall. At first the roar was unbearable, his thoughts multiplying like sparks. Over time, without effort, the sound became a single presence, and his thoughts dissolved into it. He did not defeat them. They returned to the source. These stories are not lessons to memorize, but mirrors held to your own experience. The nuance lies in seeing that peace is not fragile. It does not break when thoughts arise. It breaks only when you believe it must be defended. Like a deep lake reflecting clouds, the mind remains undisturbed at its depths, even as the surface changes. When the ancients wished to understand the mind, they did not interrogate it with questions. They invited it to sit beside them, like a guest who had traveled far and needed no instruction, only space. The ritual of stillness begins in this spirit, not as discipline enforced, but as a quiet meeting with what already is. Choose a moment when the day loosens its grip, perhaps when light softens and shadows stretch like long breaths across the floor. Sit as a mountain sits, grounded yet unassuming, and let the spine rise naturally, as bamboo rises towards sky without effort. Close the eyes gently, as one might close a gate without locking it, and notice the breath moving as a river moves through a familiar valley. Do not guide it, do not deepen it. Simply feel where it touches you, at the nostrils like cool morning air, or in the chest like a tide arriving and retreating. Thoughts will come, as birds return to a tree at dusk. When they arrive, do not chase them into flight. Let them perch, let them leave. You remain the tree. If the mind tightens, imagine placing your thoughts on broad leaves and setting them upon a stream. Some leaves drift slowly, some spin in small circles, some disappear around the bend. You do not need to follow them. Your task is only to sit on the bank, feeling the earth beneath you, listening to water speak its endless language. Each time you notice you have been carried away, return as naturally as water returns to its course after meeting stone. There is another practice the elders called the art of observation, though it is closer to listening than watching. As you move through your day, whether washing your hands or walking beneath open sky, allow the senses to open like windows in spring. Feel the temperature of the air on your skin. Hear footsteps as echoes in a canyon. See colors as clouds passing through awareness. Thoughts may comment, compare, judge, like wind rustling dry leaves. Let the wind pass. Stay with what is directly felt, solid as the mountain path beneath your feet. Over time, something subtle occurs. The habit of resistance loosens, like ice melting from a river's edge. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer demand a response. They are weather, not commands. In this way, stillness is not something you enter for a few moments and leave behind. It becomes a way of moving, of speaking, of resting. The ritual ends, but the river continues. When the wind no longer fears the mountain, it passes freely, singing through pines and vanishing into open sky. So it is with the mind that no longer wages war against its own thoughts. What once seemed like an endless storm reveals itself as a changing season, and beneath every season, the earth remains calm and patient. You were never meant to conquer the river of thinking, only to remember that you are also the riverbank, the depth and the silent ocean beyond the current. Sit when you can, walk when you must, and in both, let thoughts come and go, like clouds greeting an old peak. Nothing needs to be pushed away. Nothing needs to be held. If this stillness has calmed you, allow the next murmur of the mountain to find its way to you. Stay on the path. The journey is long, and the river is kind.